Okay, we're talking about a little bit about last week's Parsha Miketz and then some Parsha Vayigash, right? Parashat Miketz is the beginning of the ascending of the Yosef HaTzadik, right? Yosef gets to move up from the place that he was and becoming all of a sudden from all the way down to all the way on top. So the week before that, Yosef was crying and he was all upset. The brothers were selling him. He was begging at the brothers, please don't sell me, don't do this to me. And then, as he said, even Midrash says, as he was passing by his mother's grave, when they were taken to Israel, they passed by Bethlehem, where the mom was buried, Rachel. He jumps out and goes on his mother's grave and he starts crying, mother, save me! Don't! How could this happen to me? I don't want to be. This is not good. How could it be like this? I'm gonna be sold as a slave. Please save me! And nothing. He goes to Egypt, and 12 years later he becomes a king. So and then Yaakov finds out in next week's parsha that Yosef is alive and he's a king in Mitzrayim and he's all happy and he's going to go down to Mitzrayim to visit his son, right? He's all smiling. So what's the connection with these? What do you see from this picture? From one side, you could be crying about something and you think it's the worst thing that happened in your life. How could this be? How could this happen? How could this is not fair. This is nothing. Yosef, 12 years later, what is he? A king. The only way that he could have become a king was what? Through that path that he went. Through that path that he went, it was his kingship. But he was crying, I don't want to be here. I don't want this. Hashem says, but no, you have to go through this path in order for you to become king. So he was all with cries and hardship and Yisurim. At the end, kingship. Yaakov Avinu, what happens to him? Yaakov Avinu finds out his son became a king. He's all happy. He packs his bag, starts going to Egypt with a limousine. The guards coming and taking him down with a lot of kavod, with a lot of honor. He goes down there. And what does he end up, Yaakov Avinu? Where does his sons end up? As slaves in Mitzrayim. In the beginning, look good. Yaakov is going down with a lot of kavod. His son came to visit him. The king of Mitzrayim comes to visit him. They send soldiers and limousines and all these things to take him down. But it's going down. At the end, we're going to be what? His son's going to turn out to be slaves in Mitzrayim. So you never know how HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans works for a person. It might not look good from the beginning. It might not look good when it's happening. You're all upset and you're this. But at the end, could be the best thing. Or sometimes everything looks good and you're making the money is good, the life is good, everything is good. But you don't know what's going to be the end of the story. You think that everything is going perfectly, but at the end, it's not going perfectly. Or at the time you think everything is not going perfectly, but at the end you see that what? Everything was going perfectly. This is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaching us that what? That how we shouldn't look at everything with our own eyes. You never know what Hashem has plans for us. This is all up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Yosef HaTzadik goes through this whole journey. Now at Parashat Miketz, Paro he has a dream and Yosef comes and interprets the dream for him. Because it's Paro. When Yosef was first, before that, where was Yosef? In the dungeon. He was in a dungeon, sitting there, and he became the head of the dungeon. He was the one that was taking care of everything. So he's sitting there. All of a sudden, Paro is having a dream. What is the Miketz Shenatayim? From after 2 years, it says Paro has a dream. It says Paro was dreaming for 2 years straight, and every morning he got up, he couldn't remember what he dreamed about. He didn't remember his dream. So all of a sudden, after 2 years, he dreams and he wakes up and all of a sudden he remembers his dream. He said, why is that? Why is the Torah telling us that? He said, because of what Yosef did when he was in the dungeon. When he interpreted the dream for the butler, after he said to him that what, you're going to go back to your work and you're going to start serving Paro again, he tells him, Zachor Zachartani le Paro. He says, please remember and mention me in front of Paro. He says, because of those two words that he said, he ended up staying in the dungeon for extra 2 years. Yeah, actuality, Yosef supposed to be in the dungeon only for 10 years. Because of those two extra words, Zachor Zachartani, please mention me in front of Paro, Hashem made a decree that he has to stay in jail for another extra 2 years. Again, you see why Torah is telling us this thing again? Because he said Hashem changed his plans, changed everything because of what? Because of the actions that we do. So that means everything that comes out in front of us, it's all because of what? Our actions. All whatever you do, that's what Hashem, according to that, puts other things, other challenges in front of you. Yosef, he didn't do anything wrong. All he did was what? Told the guy, please remind me by the thing. But Yosef, you got the label of the tzaddik. Everybody mentions you as a tzaddik. That means you have emunah shelema, you have 100% trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why are you asking these people for help? You don't need to ask. Even if you ask, what you have to say is Zachor Zachartani. Just say, listen, if they mention me. He says, you could have said, just mention me. It's that, now please mention me twice, he tells him. Tell him once. Why you have to tell him twice? He says, because of that, Hashem delayed his plans for another 2 years in order for Yosef to get his punishment for those two words that I said extra to the butler after he interpreted his dreams. So again, he comes to tell us again, we have to be careful with our actions, and we have to understand that everything that Hashem does is for a reason. Yosef, in every step of the way, he always says he mentioned God. Every step of the way, Yosef mentions God, 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 God. Even when he goes to the Paro and he tells him his dream, what does he tell Paro? He says, I have a dream, but there is nobody that can interpret this dream for me. I heard about you, he says. That what? I heard about you. I heard about you that you interpret the dreams of the butler and the baker, and it all came true. So he said, I want you to give me the interpretation for my dream. What does Yosef says? What does that mean, Bil Adai? He says, so Yosef tells Paro, who am I? He says, I'm nobody. I'm not the one who can give you the interpretation of the dream. Who's going to do it? Elokim. Hashem is doing it, not me. Such a emunah. Imagine you standing in front of the king. They just brought you out of the dungeon. You have your chance to what? To get your freedom. You have a chance to get your freedom. What would you do? Yeah, of course, I know how to interpret your dreams. I tell you exactly what happened. Even because he had the chokhmah, he knew how to do it. He could have just stayed there and talk about himself and to give himself a big how do you say it? Make himself look like such a big shot. But it's still, when he was in front of Paro, if you say Bil Adai, who am I? I don't know anything. He says Bil Adai, I'm nobody. I don't know anything. What are you saying? You don't know. Paro is going to throw you back into the jail again. Say, I know everything. I know how to tell you. He has so much trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said, Bil Adai, I'm nobody. I don't even know anything. He says this is the trust that Yosef had in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why from him we expected more. We expect more from Yosef. Why would you tell it? Why would you ask the butler to mention you in front of Paro? You have such a emunah. So therefore, that's why he got punished for extra 2 years in the jail. Now, after he says that, he interprets the dream for Paro, right? He tells him everything. Oh, this is going to be the 7 years of the goodness and 7 years of the famine. and all of these things. And he tells him, yes, that the dream is going to happen. You dreamed about this twice, so that means it's going to come true. He tells him. Now, there's a whole conversation going on between Paro and Yosef, right there in the Torah. It says, Yosef comes and tells him also the solution to the dream. Yosef. He even tells Paro the solution to the dream. So, again, Yosef, what are you doing? Why are you giving him the solution? He didn't ask you for the solution. He tells him, yes, you got to find somebody to store the food for the 7 years, and then when this famine comes, they can use the food. And then Paro hears all these things, so you gave him all the solution. Why are you telling him? He's going to get the solution from you, and what are you going to do with you? Throw you back in the jail. Don't forget, you're Eved Ivri. You're a slave. You're a Hebrew slave. In Egypt, slaves had no value at all. A slave had no life of his own, had nothing. A slave, I mean, he has no value at all. So especially Hebrew slaves, because Hebrew slaves, they were worthless. They had no thing about them. So you're telling him all the solution. He says again, Yosef had 100% trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why all these things happen? There's a reason. When he tells Paro the solution, Paro comes and says what? It says, "Vayomer Paro el avadav nimtza kazeh ish asher ruach Elokim bo." He says, is there anybody here that has a ruach Elokim, that has has part of God in him? He says, is there anybody that has part of God in him like this guy? Paro already said, I don't think there is anybody here that has the chokhmah that Yosef has. He says, just because he opened up his mind, he gave the solution. Now Paro, what happened? Because he trusted in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Paro tells him, oh, there's nobody else. He says, well, the way you interpreted my dream and the way you gave me the solution, there is nobody like you in this whole Egypt. The whole Egypt, there is nobody like you. So therefore what? You're going to be on top of my house. But from your mouth, everybody will kiss every word that comes out of your mouth. He says, but don't forget that there's somebody above you. There's somebody bigger than you. Right? And then he said, look, I gave you the whole Eretz Yisrael to your hand. He took out his ring and gave it to Yosef. And he put on the clothing of the king. And he put him in the chariot of the king. And they called him the Ser. Avrech is Ser. And without you, nobody will raise his hand and his leg in Mitzrayim. What is this whole conversation is all about? Why is Paro telling him all these things? That I put you in there. Don't forget that who is higher than you. There's somebody higher than you, and without you, nobody is going to do anything because you're the one that is going to run the whole Mitzrayim. What's this whole conversation all about? What is Paro is trying to tell Yosef? Paro was giving a position of power to Yosef, right? He's becoming the second. First man in charge was Paro. He becomes the second man in charge in whole Mitzrayim, in whole Egypt. So he's telling him, listen, you're the one who's going to be in charge because of the chokhmah, because of the knowledge that you have. But don't forget who you're working for. Who you're working for? For me, Paro. You're working for me. Don't try to outsmart me, he's telling him. But what is Paro concerned about? What are you afraid of Yosef? Yosef is an Eved. What are you going to do to you? Yosef knows if Paro snaps his finger, he's going to be back in jail again. So why is he telling him all these things? He says it's a Torah message to us. Torah is giving a message to us. Torah is telling us something. He says, what does he mean by all of these things? He says this is God talking to Yosef. He says, God is telling all of us. He says, Yosef, I gave you all the talents. I gave you all this chokhmah that you have, everything that you know, and you know how to interpret the dreams and all these things only for one reason. Don't forget who you're working for. God is telling us. I give you all your talents. I give you all the abilities you have. I give you everything that you have right now. Only not for you. One thing. Don't forget who you're working for. For me. For God. Hashem is telling us every day this message. I gave you everything you have. I gave you talents. I gave you powers. I gave you all the things that you need. But don't forget who you're working for. Because most of us, what happens to us when you get all of those things? We forget. We forget who gave us all these powers, everything that we have, where it comes from. Because of that, uvil adecha. Only without you, lo yarim ish yado raglo. Because of you, this that I put you in this world, you're the only one who can do what I put this mission that I given you in this world. You're the only one. Bil adecha. There's nobody else. Nobody else in this world that can do what you can do. This is what Paro tells Yosef, but this is what Hashem tells us. There is nobody else that can do what you could do. Remember that. Because I have given you those special powers. I have given you those talents. But don't take these talents and these powers that I've given you and use it against me. Don't use it against me. Why? Because once you become successful and you become rich and all that, what do? The first thing that goes out the door is who? Hashem. You're going to forget who gave you all these powers, who gave you all these talents and everything that you have. So that's the whole conversation. Pharaoh is telling him, I'm giving you all these powers, I give you all these things for only one purpose. What's the purpose? To make my kingdom bigger. To make me stronger in my kingdom, Pharaoh says. Hashem says the same thing. I'm giving you all these talents. I'm giving you all these powers only for one reason. What? To make my name great in this world. That's it. That's what I want from you. To make my name great in this world. There's no other reason I'm giving you all of these things that you have right now. That's what I want from you. That's how he said. And because even Yosef, when next week's Parsha, when he sees his brothers, what does he tell them? Right away. He tells them, don't think. He reveals himself in this week's Parsha, Vayigash. He tells them, I'm Yosef. But right away he tells them what? Don't be upset. Why? Because don't think that you sold me. It was you that sold me to come to Egypt. Who did it? Hashem did it. Hashem wanted me to come here to become a king. Right away, on the spot. Without making his brothers feel bad, without doing anything I said to tell them, oh, look what you did to me, but look, oh, you're wrong. You're all, you laughed at my dreams. You thought I'm going to be a nobody. You thought I'll never be a king. You said you're never going to bow down to me. And how many times did you bow down to me so far? 2 times, just like my dream. He didn't say anything to them. But the first thing that he tells them is what? Don't be upset that you sold me. It wasn't you. Hashem did it. Not you guys. It wasn't you. This is the emunah, this is the trust that Yosef had in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is it? The what? That's the first, that's besides the point. I'm talking about now, this is the midah that Hashem is looking for. This is the character trait of Yosef that became so big. There is nobody in the Torah that is called tzaddik, and nobody else that in the Torah said was matzliach. Matzliach means what? Successful. There was nobody matzliach in the Torah that says. He said, Yosef ish matzliach. It says in the Torah. Yosef was always successful in whatever he did. Why? Because you always remember that everything that happens is from Hashem. When he was Eved by Potiphar, Potiphar gave all the keys of his house to him. Why? Because whatever he did, he was successful. Why? Because he knew everything comes from who? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only that, Yosef said, what did he tell himself? Hashem put me in this position. Hashem put me to be an Eved, to be a slave. If I'm a slave, I'm going to be the best slave that ever there was. I'm not going to sit there and cry about it and complain about it and say, well, I'll be depressed. No. Hashem, you made me a slave. I'm going to be the best slave that you ever seen. That's why Potiphar gives all the keys to his house to him, because he was the best slaves, the best slave that ever had, and he was successful. He ends up in the dungeon. He becomes a prisoner. He's in the prison now. What would we do? Cry, depressed, upset, complain. Yosef said, what? I'm in prison now. Hashem put me in prison. I'm going to be the best prisoner ever been. Ever been. He was such a good prisoner that what happened? Sarah, the Tsar, the head of the prisoners, the guy who had all the keys, gives him the keys. He says, the keys in your hand, I'm going. Because you're the best prisoner I ever seen. He says, this is the attitude of Yosef. That's why Yosef gets matzliach. Always successful. And on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, we read that pasuk that says about Yosef. The whole pasuk we read 7 times. We open the Heichal, we read that. Why? Because we want to be successful like Yosef. We want to be like him. But you can't just come successful just by reading the pasuk. How do you become successful? When you practice the midah of Yosef, the characteristics of Yosef. That whatever position I am in, wherever I am, who put me there? Hashem. And if I'm here in this position right now, I'm going to be the best that I can be. And this is exactly Yosef. That's why Yosef becomes the symbol of Chanukah. Symbol of Chanukah. Because whatever he did, and whatever he was, he never lost his trust. During the Chashmonaim, during the Chanukah time, all the Jews lost their emunah. They all became mityavnim. They all became like Greeks. They didn't stay the same. But Yosef always stayed the same. Yosef is the continuation of who? Yaakov Avinu. The pasuk says, "Ele toldot Yosef, Ele toldot Yaakov, who Yosef." These are the continuation of Yaakov, who Yosef. The continuation of Yaakov is who? Yosef. Why? Because Yosef followed in the characteristics of his father also. What was the best? What was Yaakov known for? Yaakov was known for midat emet. Emet means what? Truth, right? We know emet as truth, but emet is not just truth. Emet is also has another meaning. Emet has many meanings, but another meaning of it means consistency. What's consistency? That you're always the same. You don't change. You're always the same. Consistent. You're always the same. You don't change. That's what it means. Yaakov Avinu had the same characteristic. Yaakov Avinu, when he was at home, was the same person. When he was in yeshiva, was the same person. When he came out of yeshiva, was the same person. When he went to work for Lavan, the biggest Ramai, the biggest crook in the world, he was still the same. He didn't say, oh, he's a crook, I'm going to be a bigger crook than him, and I'm going to show him. He was a crook. He says, I'm going to be the same honest Yaakov that I was before. The same person that I was before. I don't have to be in the yeshiva in order to be honest. Even when I'm working, I'm going to be the same person. I'm going to have the same characteristics. And that's why Yaakov was successful. When he came back from Lavan, he saw Esav, he was honest. All his life he tried to stay the same person that he was. Consistent. Didn't change. It says Yosef was the same way. Yosef went to Egypt. He was all alone. He could have done anything he wanted. He could have been anything he wanted. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. But what? He didn't. He says, that's why he says after he became slave, he said, who Yosef? He said, Eli told Yosef, who Yosef? Why who Yosef? That's Yosef. What that's Yosef? The same Yosef that was Roeh Etzon Echav, that he was a shepherd with his brothers. This is the same Yosef that became the king of Mitzrayim. He hasn't changed. The same Yosef. Nothing changed about it. Because Yosef knew what? He knew his mission in this world. My mission in this world is to serve Hashem. That's it. I know who my boss is. Bil Adecha, there is nobody else like me, and I'm only working for who? For Hashem, for nobody else. And if I'm working for Hashem, I have to be always what? The same. Because I always say you can fool everyone except Hashem. You can fool anyone on earth, but Hashem you cannot fool. And you don't forget, this way you don't forget also that who you are, who the boss is. Yosef, everything that he did, he says when he was Eved, everything that he did said Baruch Hashem, Be'ezat Hashem. Hashem will help. Hashem will help. When he was dealing, who you were dealing with? Bunch of Egyptians, idol worshippers. They didn't know anything, but still to them he was telling them what? God will help. God willing. God this. Everything God. This is everyone saw. He says, wow. Even comes to Paro, he says, I'm not interpreting your dreams. God is interpreting your dreams. Oh, even the Goy realized that what? That Yosef is Amiti. Yosef is 100% the same. Doesn't change. But by us, we think what? If I change a little bit here, if we come to Galut, and we change a little bit here and change a little bit there, we can fit in better. Oh, if I go to work, I take off my kippah, I don't have to look Jewish, in order to, to fit in, so nobody will, doesn't cause anything. But we don't know that the more you show yourself how amiti you are, how sincere you are to your religion and to your beliefs, the more people respect you. The more you wishy-washy, the worse it gets. The more anti-Semitism, the more things. In Germany happened the same thing. In Germany, they decided what? They want to become like Germans. We're going to study, we're going to go to college, we're going to become, masculine, they become the educators, and many Jews were professors in colleges, professors in universities. They were very advanced and modern, everything. And what happened? The more modern they became, the more anti-Semitism grew in Germany.
That's because we also try to push things that are against us also.
Whatever it was, but they tried to change. They didn't stay the same.
You're right, they got worse.
Right. Right. So Yosef is trying to teach us is that don't forget your mission in the world. Don't forget what are you doing here? What you came here? What you came here for? Yosef is the one that is gonna continue all of it. Yosef is the symbol of Hanukkah and symbol of Galut, because Yosef knew that Am Yisrael are gonna come to Mitzrayim and they're gonna what? They start the whole Galut of Mitzrayim is gonna start. So the only thing that will make you survive in Galut is what? When you stay the same, you don't change. If you change and you want to become like them and act like them and dress like them and do the things they do and celebrate the things they celebrate, then slowly it's going to what? It's going to wear out everything. Nothing's going to be left anymore. And Yosef is trying to teach us that, because this was the beginning of the first Galut of Am Yisrael. Was here, and there was the worst one. Mitzrayim was the worst, even worse than Germany and all these things. But that's the message of Yosef to us from the beginning. That this is the characteristic you have to work for, and don't forget your mission in this world. What you came here for? Hashem put you here to work for Him. I gave you all the talents, everything. This is why Hashmonaim. What happened to Hashmonaim? Hashmonaim, the ones that went to war with the Greeks. The mishpacha, the family was like 13 people, a handful of people that went to war with what? With the biggest army in the world back then. Biggest army with tanks and guns, with whatever they had back then. They were successful. They accomplished what they did. They took Yerushalayim back. They took Beit HaMikdash back. But do we hear anything about Hashmonaim after that? What happened to Hashmonaim? How come there's no mention of them anymore? They did a task, an impossible task they accomplished. Defeating the Greek army, bringing back the Beit HaMikdash for another 200 years. We had the Beit HaMikdash. Well, what happened to Hashmonaim? We never hear about them again. It says because Hashmonaim did one mistake. They forgot what their mission was in this world. What did they do? Hashmonaim were which Shevet? Shevet Levi. They were Kohanim. They were Kohanim that work in Beit HaMikdash. So after they won the war, what happened to them? The Ga'ava took over them and they said, we're going to be the king of Israel now.
They didn't win the war. They only won the battle.
The battle, right? But the battle that they won, it lasted a long time.
It's not winning the war. And also the courts kind of stopped them from continuing on.
No, but after they took over, the Avodah of Beit HaMikdash continued. Everything went back to normal.
The courts failed to, because back then they were still obligated by the court, the Rabbanim at that time, to follow their ruling. And the fact is,
right. And what did they do?
They said don't.
They didn't listen to them.
No, they said don't continue the fight.
Right.
After they freed the Beit HaMikdash, which was a mistake.
After they took the Beit HaMikdash, they were supposed to go back to their work. They were supposed to become Kohanim. They said, no, we're going to be the king now. But you can't be the king. You're not from the Shevet Yehuda. Only Yehuda, lo yasir Shevet mi Yehuda, he says. Only Yehuda can be a king. They said, no, we want to be king now. He said, that's it. You just failed your mission. Your mission is in this world was to be what? Kohanim. That's it. You were supposed to be a Kohen. You won the war. Who won the war? You didn't win the war. Who won the war? Hashem made it for you to happen. But what happened to you all of a sudden? The Gava took over you. And what did you do? You said, I won the war. I want to be the king now. He says they failed. That was the failure. He said there's nothing. After that, there was never, even the family was never, nothing left of the family either. Family of Hashmonaim, no one had no continuation anymore because of that. Because we have to realize Hashem put you in this world for a mission. And if you want to mess up your mission, then you're going to lose it. My job is to do be the best that I can be. Just like Yosef. Whatever situation, I am to be the best. We went to war. We won it. Now we have to go back to do our Kohanim. To work in Beit HaMikdash. The Malchut has to go back to Yehuda. That's it. And this is Yosef. Yosef says, everything that happened to me is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything Vayigash keeps telling his brothers. He keeps telling them that don't worry, don't be upset. The brothers come ask him for Mechila. He says, don't ask me for Mechila. Whatever you did, it was Hashem's will. Hashem did it. Hashem did everything was Hashem. And this is the midah of Yosef. That's why he was matzliach. That was he was successful. Having in mind always that what? Hashem did everything that whatever he did to me. I was an Eved because Hashem wanted me to be Eved. I went to prison because Hashem wanted me to go to prison. Of course, he didn't do anything wrong. You can't do things wrong and end up in jail. Hashem did it. No. He knew he didn't do anything wrong. He knew he was his best that he can be. He avoided doing anything wrong, but at the end ended up in jail. Why? Hashem wanted it. Because I know myself, I didn't do anything wrong. Everything I did was by the book. I did everything by the book. Hashem put me here, therefore I'm going to be the best that I can be. And this is our job. It's not, we don't have the challenges of Yosef. We're not that high. We're not at that level to have the challenges of Yosef. But, Yosef, each and every one of us has the challenges of our own life. And those challenges that Hashem put in front of us, those are the challenges that you have to show Hashem that Hashem, I know it comes from you, and this is what you want from me. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the best that I can be in this challenge that you're giving me. Right? And this is exactly it, because if you forget your thing, your mission, that's what I said. That's why he said on Chanukah, what do we say? Ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. What are you telling us, Ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol? What do we care? Who was Yochanan? Who was Yochanan? Yochanan was the father of Matatyahu. But he was dead already. Why are you telling me this? He says he's reminding us, who was Yochanan? Yochanan was the father of Matatyahu. Yochanan was Kohen Gadol for 80 years. At the end of 80 years, he loses his faith. He becomes a Karahi. He doesn't believe in Torah Shebe'al Peh anymore. The oral Torah. After 80 years, he goes into Kodesh. After 80 years, he goes into Kodesh Kodashim. He sees miracles with his own eyes. He comes out alive. If you had one wrong thing, you go into Kodesh Kodashim, one wrong thought in your head on Yom Kippur, you could die on the spot. 80 years he goes in there, he comes out alive. On the 80th year, he goes and he doesn't take the ketoret inside of the Kodesh Kodashim. He brings it outside and burns it. So all the Chachamim tell him, you can't do that, it's wrong. He doesn't listen. He doesn't believe in Torah v'sha'al peh. He becomes a karai. Matatyahu, his son, comes and fixes the problem, what his father did wrong. He comes and takes Beit HaMikdash back again. He gets it back, he makes it clean, brings the kosher oil, brings everything that is supposed to be done. But then again, he does the same thing that his father did. He forgets that what? I have to be a Kohen, I can't be a king. That's not my job. I have to listen to the Beit Din, what they're telling me. Beit Din is telling us that you have to be a Kohen, you can't be a king, and he didn't listen again. The son did the same mistake as the father did. That's why the whole family of Hashmonaim was gone. Nothing else left of them.
Because they wanted to be kings?
Yes. By force. By force. We told them you can't be king. You're from Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi is not a king. Shevet Yehuda is the king.
The kings are from Shevet
Yehuda. Yes. It comes from the tribe of Yehuda, not tribe of Levi. Levi, his job is to be a Kohen.
Not a Levi.
The Shevet Levi came Kohanim, and Levim comes from there, from Shevet Levi. So he had to be a Kohen. So this is what the message of this. That's why Yosef's story always comes out on when? On Chanukah. Yosef's story always comes on Chanukah. Because Yosef's message is this, that you don't change because of circumstances. You don't change because these things happening to you. You still have to stay the same Jew, the same the observant Jew that you always been. Always be that, and leave it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything else. You be the best that you can be, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of the rest. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do everything else. This is that's the message of Chanukah also. The whole Chanukah happened because of a jar of oil. Why we keep advertising the oil? Why oil? Why is oil the symbol of Chanukah? Because oil is the only thing that doesn't mix in with anything else. Chanukah, right? Oil doesn't mix with anything else. Mix it with water, with Coca-Cola, with whatever, still oil comes on top. Doesn't mix in. Same thing Chanukah is telling us, Yosef is telling us, you don't mix in and you don't change yourself for somebody else. But today's society, what does it tell you? You have to be politically correct all the time. You can't say anything against, that the people believe. Yeah, whatever, you want to be gay? Oh, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you say anything against them, what happens? You're ousted. You're bad. You're no good. It says the Torah, the Chanukah, Yosef is telling us, I don't care. If it's wrong, it's wrong. That's it. It's wrong, it's wrong. I'm not going to be politically correct. I'm going to stay the same person. I always say this is wrong. It shouldn't be this way. And I'll still be the best Jew that I can be. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the best Jew that I can be. I said a story on Shabbat also. A nice story I heard from Rabbi Krohn. Rabbi Krohn, he always says, he said it also, he says, any fool can count the seeds in an apple, right? Anybody can open up an apple and see how many seeds are in there. But no one can say what can come out of one seed of apple. How many apples can come out from one seed of apple?
2.
No. Infinite. One seed of apple, you plant it in the ground, it becomes a tree. How many apples comes out of it?
2.
For years and years and years and years. From one seed. One seed, one action that you do, you don't know what can come out of it. One thing that you do for Hashem, for Kiddush Hashem, you don't know what's going to cause after that. From that one action. One action that Yosef did, always mentioning God in front of everyone. He didn't care. Idol worship, not idol worship. Hashem is doing it. In front of Paro, Hashem is telling the interpreting the dream, not me. Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. And that made him to become what? To move up all the way to be a king. And Yosef didn't do a small thing. He saved the whole world. He didn't just save Mitzrayim. Ra'av ba'aretz, the whole land had Ra'av, had famine. Yosef gets to save the whole world. Yosef. And he is Matzliach. Whatever he does is always successful. Always successful. So Kohen said it's a very nice story. He said a rabbi moves to one of these small towns in Canada, and over there he opens up a shul, an Orthodox shul. There aren't so many Orthodox shuls. He's the only one, but there are a lot of conservative and reform shuls there. So he's not so successful there. He has a small little place. It's not so nice, not so beautiful. Doesn't have a big place like the reform and conservative places. So all the young people don't come to him. They all want to go to the big shuls, the nice shuls. They all want to go there. So he decides to build a big shul, but he had no money. So he decides to go to the Bank of Quebec or something, one bank, and asks for a loan. So he goes to the bank, walks into the bank, he says, I want to talk to the manager. Manager of the bank, who is it? He says the name, I don't remember the names and everything. So he says, who is it? This guy, okay. He stands there, they tell the manager he wants to talk to you, he goes inside. He goes inside, sits with the manager, hello, hi, my name is this. And he says, I'm here to borrow money. How much do you need? $150,000. Back then, we're talking about 30, 40 years ago. $150,000. $150,000 is a lot of money. What do you want to do with it? I want to build doesn't say a shul, so I want to build a Jewish center. He said he was afraid if he says I want to build a shul, the guy's not going to give him the money. Why? Because most of the Reform and Conservative had all the money. Most of the Orthodox people didn't have so much money. So he said, I want to build a Jewish center. So he said, the guy asked him, but what domination you going to be? He said, what do you mean by domination? I want to know why you're going to be Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, which one? So he says he can't lie anymore. He can't tell him a lie. So he says, I want to build an Orthodox shul. Orthodox shul? He says, yes. So all of a sudden the manager of the bank starts crying. He doesn't know what's going on, what's happening. So what happened? He says, you were Orthodox rabbi, because when I saw you from outside, I wasn't sure. But I know that you're from your beard and your hat. I realized that you're Orthodox rabbi. He says, yes, why? He says, I want to tell you a story. So what's the story? He says, when I was young, when we were 9, 10 years old, my father dies in a fire accident. My father dies. This is talking about 50, 60 years ago now. Dies in a fire accident. And we were left with nothing. My father didn't have life insurance. We had no savings, anything. He was the only bread bearer in our house. The only one who brings income to the house. We didn't know what to do. He said we had a little general store in that town. He said the general store like a makolet in Israel. General store that sold everything. Milk, eggs, clothing, shoes, everything. He says the owner of this makolet, this general store, was an Orthodox Jew. He said after he heard what happened to us and my father died, he said the man, while we were sitting at home, we all didn't know what we're going to do. He came to our house and he says, listen, told my mother, he says, you can come to my store and take anything you want, milk, eggs, clothing, shoes, and I'll never charge you anything, he said. I will never charge you for anything. Anything you want, nobody's going to ask you anything. You want to write down what you took, you can write down. You want to pay me whenever you want to pay me, but I will never ask you for the money. He says, because of that man, we survived the death of our father. Because of this Orthodox man. He says, now that I saw you at the bank, you came in and I saw you from the window, behind my window, I saw you, and I thought in my mind, you must be an Orthodox rabbi. I said to myself, this is the time to pay back for what that man did for me. That Orthodox man did for me. Now is the time that I want to pay him back. And he said he granted him the whole 150,000 loan, and he was able to build a big Beit Knesset over there.
That man is being the one that helped her?
Yes.
No, I'm saying was that the Orthodox?
No, that was somebody else.
That's someone else.
That man apparently he sells the store after a while. He leaves town. He never asked them for the money. He never asked them for anything. But they never knew where he went. So he said, but when I saw you, I said, this is the time to pay back my debt that I have.
More of the story is to dress up Orthodox.
No, more of the story is you do one thing good and you never know what comes out of it. The goodness that man did caused to be a build of Orthodox shul, and he says many Orthodox kids came out of it that went to yeshivot, and many families started going to that shul, that their kids ended up going to yeshivot in Eretz Israel, and some of the kids even became rabbis. Rabbi Yafeh, he's the one that says he came from that shul in Canada. He came from there. So one act, one good deed, you don't know how far you can take it, how far you can go. You show your emunah to Hashem. You want to try to do a good thing to help someone with your emunah that you have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of everything. You can change the whole world. You can cause what kind of thing happens in the long run. You never know what's going to come out of it. And this is again Yosef. As long as you keep your emunah and you know it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You can become a king. You can become a king and you can be successful in everything that you do. Be'ezrat Hashem. Chazakim u'bruchim.